Hey everybody, welcome to a real quickie episode of Pews and Brews. I'm Not So Tactical Tim here at the tavern with a beer, of course. Anyway, we're not going to discuss a gun, a cartridge, anything like that. The big rage these days is wet tumbling. I figured out how to make, if you want to try out wet tumbling, how to make a wet tumbler for $1. There was a local yard sale in my neighborhood a little while ago, and I just happened to be driving past, and I noticed somebody had one of those old-fashioned ice cream makers sitting out. You know, the one that you have the thing that you sit in the tub when you surround it with ice and you plug it in and let it run for half an hour. I thought to myself, I wonder if that would work. So I picked it up for $1, brought it home, and sure enough, the motor turns at the perfect speed. It's a little bit loud, but hey, what the heck. But it turns at the perfect speed. The drum that for the ice cream isn't watertight, so you can only kind of lean it over at an angle, but it works. Put a little copper baffle in there so it keeps the brass agitating as it's turning around, and I'll show you real quick how I did it. That's right, in the intro I said $1 wet tumbler, and here it is. Some of you might be thinking, oh, well, that's getting a little ridiculous now. What's the big deal? Go out and buy a wet tumbler for $80 or $100 or something like that. The nice big ones, they're up into the couple $100 range. So for $1, I like trying to repurpose stuff, so we'll give this a shot. Pick this up at a yard sale. You can find them all over the place. It's just an old forecourt ice cream maker. So this is a gallon drum in here with the external plastic tub. Here's the motor head. Then your lid for the metal ice cream bin in there. The only thing that I added, I had this old scrap piece of copper laying around. This curve doesn't mean anything. It just happened to be cut like that. I didn't bother changing anything. I just cut this little L shape out of it. Put these ends in my vise and bent them over. You want to make sure to leave this a little bit, maybe an 1/8 inch wider than the diameter of your ice cream drum here. The copper's flexible, so all we're going to do is bend it a little bit and push it all the way down to the bottom like that. And that's going to serve as our baffle that keeps the brass tumbling. And a little headphone warning here. I'm going to dump some brass into this. This is 50 rounds of 50 Beowulf. Size-wise, probably about the equivalent of 100 rounds of 223, and you can see it barely even fills this at all. The reason I use a little bit less brass at a time is because when we'll turn it on, we'll tilt it, and with a bunch of brass in there, with all the liquid, you can't really tilt it too far. It doesn't agitate quite as well. We'll just sit it in the bucket, and there's a dimple in the bottom of this bucket that it spins on. Put the cap on. Gotta line up those teeth. Flip that over. We're ready to go. Tilt it over on its side. I'll probably make something a little nicer, a little cradle for this then, but for right now this will work. And you can hear these are kind of loud, but yeah, well. But they turn at almost a perfect speed for this. If you want to get a little more inventive, I'm sure you could just use the motor head and figure out some way to mount it and put a watertight drum or something on it. You know, maybe even put some kind of pulley system or something on this to turn the, you know, a drum that's mounted on rollers. But for $1, if you want to just give wet tumbling a try and not get into it for a bunch of money, give it a shot. See what you think. There's the tumbler at work. Now, like I said earlier, I did tilt it a little bit. That way the brass actually tumbles in there. We can't put it totally flat on its side because that cap isn't watertight. But just having it on an angle like this seems to work pretty well. Been running it for about 45 minutes. We'll give it another 15. Shut it down, pull the brass out, rinse it off, and see what kind of results we got. Here's our brass right out of the tumbler. I just have it laid out on an old cheapy screen here to dry. Now you can see it's not super shiny, but it's clean. And that's my biggest concern, so it's not scratching up my dies. I'm not into the whole mirror polish thing. I mean, that's great. Some people like that. For me, it doesn't really matter. Just don't want it scratching my dies and the inside of my chamber. So, for $1 and a little piece of bent metal, you can have a wet tumbler. So there you have it. For a couple of bucks and a trip through your local flea market or yard sale, you can give wet tumbling a try. Now, I didn't have any stainless steel pins or anything like that in there. It was just a little squeeze of Dawn dishwashing liquid and some jet dry. So the cases didn't come out super shiny, but they were clean. Now, finding motor heads that turn at that slow a speed is pretty difficult to find, really, especially at that kind of price. So I'll probably try to take this and turn it into a horizontal, you know, sealed drum, true wet tumbler. But for what we were using it for, just to give wet tumbling a try and see if it would work out, I think it did just fine. If you don't do a whole lot of reloading and don't have a ton of cases, I'm sure that you could probably just do what I showed you there, and it'll work just the way it is. So for a couple of bucks, you can have a wet tumbler, or the worst case scenario, go make some ice cream. Anyway, this has been Not So Tactical Tim here at the Not So Tactical Tavern, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Ice cream. Now I'm going to have to go have some ice cream.